So, welcome to Northern Powerhouses, our business success stories series of interviews, where we discuss with local business leaders, their backgrounds, their successes, their challenges, and what's really driving them forwards. And this afternoon, I'm delighted to have with us Andy Taylor, who's Managing Director at LTC Healthcare. So, firstly, Andy, thank you for spending a bit of time with us. And if you'd like to introduce yourself, LTC Healthcare, what you do, how you help people, that would be wonderful.
Yeah, thanks very much, Chris. Yeah, my name is Andy Taylor. I'm the Managing Director of LTC Healthcare, as Chris said there. I've been running my own business since 1993. So we're actually a sexual wellness company. So it's a little bit vague. Got to be careful how I describe that, but we'll sell products such as condoms to the NHS. We export condoms to 27 different countries, so it's our own brand.
Well,
We do a lot of private label products as well. So we're manufacturing, we get involved in that manufacturing process. But yeah, thank you for the opportunity.
thank you. Wonderful. I mean, amazing. I said before we started, it's amazing how many amazing businesses doing different things right on the doorstep. And so this is a great opportunity to highlight what you guys are doing. So what you mentioned the NHS, you said you export. Are what sort of makes a great client for you, either in the UK or overseas?
Yeah, I think, when I look back on this sort of question, and obviously I appreciate the podcast today is about, looking at business, but we probably got into this business by accident. So my older brother, going back years ago, set up a little mail order company. This is in the 90s, so a lot of you probably weren't listening today, won't have been born then. But it was all non-internet. It was licking envelopes and posting a few
Yeah.
condoms through. We used to do little box ads. And at the time, my brother I think we're turning over about 5 grand a year, lots of envelope licking. And then my brother got a job in the Netherlands, and younger brother, he asked me if I wanted to do it, would take over. So been
Right.
really naive and excited. I thought this is a great opportunity to run my own business. And yeah, the rest is history. So 32 years later, I think we turn over about 2.5 million this year. We sell over 30 million products, go all over Europe, and beyond as well. We've got products going in South Africa and literally all over the world.
Wow. That's what story. So you started helping your brother with the mail order business, which I do remember. Yeah, and yeah, as you say, the rest is history. So when you were growing up, is this what you thought you might be doing? Did you have a different?
Great question. I mean, absolutely not. And it probably still, I won't say it horrifies my mother because straight away you talk about sexual wellness and everybody is a little bit of taboo subject still for us. But I think from a young age, I always felt, didn't really know what I wanted to do, but
Yeah,
there was always a little bit of entrepreneurial spirit in there. And
yeah, yeah,
people often talk about, what were you doing? But it was, remember a friend of mine who used to buy big bottles of lemonade and then start selling to our friends
yeah.
smaller glasses of lemonade and making a sort of small profit. And then from a family perspective, my granddad, who was born in Leeds, and he set up an engineering business, but he set it up from literally nothing, from very poor background, and
Right.
ended up employing 40, 50 people in the
Wow.
Guiseley area and of Leeds. And as a young child, I used to look at my granddad, and you'd go into his workplace and you see all these guys on machines, and my granddad at that time had a nice car, and I'm thinking, oh gosh, but you never actually, when you're that age, think, well, none of us really know what we're going to do.
Yeah.
And certainly in my case, that was never the case. To run a business, you don't know enough about it. And I'll say just things happen, don't they, sometimes.
Absolutely amazing. And the longevity of the business, 30 years now. I don't know if you're aware of the stats. I know I can only give you for the first 10 years, but unfortunately, 80% of businesses fail in the first 5 years of operation. And of
Yeah.
the 20% that remain, another 80% of those fail in the following 5 years. So to get to 10 puts you in the top 4% of businesses. So, and I must research 20 and 30 year timescales, but it's quite incredible that longevity. What would you put your longevity down to, Andy?
Yeah, I mean, again, that's it's a really good question because you look at it and think, well, like you say, so many businesses do fail.
Yes.
I think I've always been, from my perspective, I've always been, happy to take risks, but also cautious. So when I first
Yep.
set the business up and the company up, actually, I didn't work in it full time. So I was
Right.
doing my full-time job, but actually helped one of my family members set the business up. So I was running it from a distance and weekends and evenings.
Yep.
And I was bringing my experience from my daytime job into the business and helping coaching people with things like sales calls and that sort of thing.
Yep.
And then we got to, it was around about, it was about 10 years into the business, and we were turning over round about at this stage, which, it was about £500,000. But I'm doing things like VAT returns on a Sunday evening. And I'm probably not the most patient when it comes to that. And I think my
Yep.
wife was going, God, you're even more grumpier than you usually are. And, do you really want to continue with this? So the choice was, do you sell the business, close the business, or go and operate that business full time?
Yep.
And thankfully, I decided to, I always wanted to run my own business. So I gave up a pretty highly paid job and a company car and a company pension, all the rest of it. And, I sort of walked away from that, set the business up, a little bit nerve-wracking, but, so glad I took the plunge
Yeah.
effectively.
Wow. And looking back over those 30 years, what are some of the biggest issues and challenges you've had to overcome?
Challenges where I just describe people who, everybody talks about wanting to run their own business, and I would say, any business you very much ride a roller coaster. So
Yeah.
I think we've only got half an hour or so on this podcast, so I could probably talk about some of the fun stories and episodes that have gone on over in that 30 years. But you've had things like I've had fraud. I've
Right.
had companies going bust on me.
Yep.
I've had collaboration with suppliers that were effectively going to cut us out of our production. So we basically wouldn't have had a manufacturer, and then we had contracts that we wouldn't have been able to fulfill. So, the challenges for anybody in business they're immense, but you recover from those challenges.
Yep.
I think again, the purpose of this, if I was chatting to myself and, what have I learned from this is, nothing's ever as bad as it first
No.
appears. And generally when, you do have a challenge, you're probably pushing yourself that little bit harder. You have to change and adapt, which is certainly critical in business. And usually you do, it's very much a cliche, but you do come out of it stronger. So
Yes.
it's probably, I say to people and talk to my son who's in the business now, his hair will go like my hair's gone. And, so that's part of the stress sometimes you have in a business. But I do think the benefits far outweigh the sort of adverse events, if you like, of running a business.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's, I mean, I work with lots of business owners, and one of the things I always say to them is that the challenge of running a business is the book, ultimately, the book stops with us until we get someone else for whom it can stop for. Obviously, but the great thing about running a business is we get to choose exactly how it is. That we can run our business how we choose, in the way we choose, working with who we choose, and that's so liberating, isn't it? In many ways, is we can decide the way that we want it to be.
Yeah, I mean, I get to do some, I'm really lucky, so, if I look at my my business now, and, if you chat to people in the pub and you ask what they do on a day to day, and I talk about what I do on a day to day. So, we have our own brand of condoms called EXS, which go into the NHS, and talks about the markets we go into. But we also do private label as well. So I get a lot of inquiries from people going, I want to start a condom brand, I want to start a lubricant brand. How do I do that? And what I've noticed is when I've tried to go into a different field, so we've looked at things like skincare. And I do find trying to speak to someone, sometimes a lot of companies are almost far too busy to want to speak to you or
Yeah.
to give you information. And what I do, and I think hopefully that comes across in the enthusiasm. I love talking to people
Yeah.
about, and I always use the analogy in business is, if I was speaking to my mate in the pub and he said he was going to set up a condom business or any other business, what advice would I give him and what
Yep.
would I tell him to be wary of? And I've learned so much over the years. So we do give, we give information, quickly. I think we give it honestly, which is critical.
Brilliant.
We tell people what's involved, things to look out for, things like trademarking products, for example.
Yes.
A lot of
Of course.
people, you can't be impatient with people. So whilst I might be an expert in my field, it's new to them. So you've got to have
Yep.
that patience and
Yep.
and understanding. So and I particularly enjoy that, and hopefully that enthusiasm goes over. So we're working with a number of like key brands, which are in some of the major supermarkets. So we're dealing with Boots, we're dealing with Sainsbury's, we're dealing
Oh,
with
wow.
Morrisons. So so some of those branding, the people will will probably recognise, and you may even see me around the condom and lubricant aisles. I tend to do a lot of loitering in those areas, but I'm probably the only one who does. But
Yes.
I think it's tough. Sometimes people have an idea, so in our sector,
Yep.
and think you can just ring Boots up and they're going to invite you in.
Yeah.
It's a longer process. They want to look at where you're selling, they want to look at your packaging, who you're selling to. So I've never taught, never be negative and try, talk someone out of not doing it, but I'd make sure that they were,
Yes.
realistically understanding the challenges of not just our business, but, any
Yeah.
business.
Yeah. And and just looking back on your own business, if you started again, is there anything different anything significant you do differently, do you think?
Yeah. Well, I used to always joke with people. So we probably took one of the toughest sectors out there because whilst we talk about condoms and with our brand, it's a medical device. So whilst it's a sort of technically seen as a fun product, it's very highly regulated. So it's a
Right.
class 2B medical device. So
Yeah,
you
yeah.
have to have full traceability, you have to have lot of technical files, they're changing medical directives as we speak, so it's
Yep.
becoming more complex. You have European, well, you've got a worldwide database now called UDAMED, and all medical devices have to be registered, and
Wow.
so it's quite a complex sort of process. So would I have gone into that particular industry? I probably would never have thought of condoms being something we can do. Bearing in mind we weren't a manufacturer,
Yep.
didn't know anything about the market, we didn't know anything at the time about manufacturing of them at all. And I jokingly say to people, I may have made more money quicker by selling, I don't know, frying pans or teddy bears or something online. But, I'm glad we've always made a profit in the 30 years. We've gone from
Brilliant.
starting our business off ironically, in a bedroom. And then we
Brilliant.
progressed to a garage, couple of family members, to me working full time, to us now employing 12 people, and
Brilliant.
we're growing as well.
Brilliant.
And we're going to have our best year ever. So I think absolutely no regrets. It's been for me a great journey. I've got to do things like this year, well, nearly every year I'll be in Thailand or Malaysia, and I go around factories, I chat to suppliers, we
Brilliant.
get to design our own packaging. we're employing people. So the job is so varied. Love what I do. I'm glad I didn't stay in the corporate world because I probably, well, I may have retired now, but I certainly wouldn't have got the same experiences as I've, had doing this with LTC.
Fabulous. What a great career. Now, interesting enough, you said Thailand. I'm just thinking that there used to be many years ago, and I don't know if it's still there. There's a yeah restaurant in Bangkok called Cabbages and Condoms. I don't know if you're familiar with that.
Uh, I, I'm not, Chris. I'm intrigued where you go actually for your meals out, but
No,
I'm
no. Well, it's a really interesting point. I visited Bangkok 30 odd years ago, and I've done it now and again since then. My brother used to live there, but it was specifically about sexual health. It was a
mm,
restaurant where they handed out condoms to a lot of the. It wasn't in
yeah,
the district, but it was close to it, and it was specifically called cabbages and condoms because they handed out free condoms at the time. So I honestly don't know if it's still there. I must search it up just to
I
find
should
out.
have a look. Yeah.
But what?
Um, Yeah, no, it's great. A lot of people actually, where people may have, so if you look at condom usage in the UK, so 16 to 24-year-olds, they get what they call a C card scheme with the NHS.
Right,
So to get onto NHS, you have to be on what they call NHS supply chain. So every 4 or 5 years, you go for a contract, and it's a
right,
competitive tender. We've been on there for over 20 years, but we work with a lot of charities. So, for example, we work with Yorkshire Mesmac in Leeds.
right.
We work with LGBTQ in Manchester. So
Oh,
we support their Pride events. Sort of household names people know where you could get EXS condoms, places like not Ansomers, looking at some of the retail stores, so I don't know, some of them in the boots, but Love Honey, that was the name. Love
yes,
Honey, big sort of
yep,
online retailer. I think they turn over about 40, 50 million.
yes,
So it's, I think things have got better in the UK for around sexual health, and
yes,
a lot of people, and this is where the serious side comes in. So, on some of our conversations are talking about, things like STIs, and when you hear about things being like antibiotic resistant STIs,
right,
it's a fun area. We should be enjoying sex. We should be doing it safely.
yeah,
And there are instances where, if not by not using a condom, it can have a serious impact on your health, such
yeah,
as HIV, or I mentioned earlier the antibiotic resistant bits. But
yes,
that's the kind of not so fun bit. A lot of our
yep,
stuff is the fun side. We've got lots of different size products, lots of retail packs. I think we do about 70 SKUs. And
right,
we get to do a lot of the fun side. We do a lot of trade shows. So I'm got two big business to business trade shows, both in, again, quite ironically, in Amsterdam, which people
right.
probably as associate with sex,
Yes,
sexual health. And if anybody does go to Amsterdam, by the way, they'll see a shop called Condomery. So anyone who ever goes, I think all the tourists go into the red light district, have a little wander around. It's a big shop, brilliant, fantastic shop. It's run by a friend of mine called Theodore. But all the staff, they're all female, really bright, colourful, really inviting shop. And people often come back and say, actually, we've seen your EXS condoms in the shop window, or your glow
brilliant.
in the dark condom, etc. So it's great. So, as I always say to my wife, I may not become the richest guy, but at least we came up with the idea of the glow in the dark condom, and it's now in a shop in Amsterdam.
Brilliant.
That could be my epitaph, perhaps.
The maker of. I love it. Absolutely love it. Absolutely fascinating. And Andy, I think you're aware we're a business coaching organisation. I'm keen to know the best coaches you've worked with, whether that's business, sport, life in general. Who's had the biggest impact on you?
Yeah. Again, I probably, I mean, one of the biggest impacts was I've got a brother who's 4 years older than me.
Yep.
I was mentioning to Chris that I won't mention where he is, but he now runs it's FTSE 100 company, so he's got about 30, 40,000 people
Wow.
reporting into him. But my brother was interested in sales, and I remember, and things you don't often get taught as a young person. So interview skills.
Yes.
How do you interact with somebody if you're going for a job interview? So my first job interview was with the Ministry of Defence, age 17. And I
Wow.
think big impacts of getting that job was probably through my brother. What do you say? What do you say if somebody asks you that question? How do you
Yeah.
interact with them? How do you ask good questions? So he was, major influence on my, development and career.
Yeah.
Then I went into pharmaceuticals. So I did 10 years of Ministry of Defence, went into pharmaceuticals, ended up working with a company called Pfizer, which people know, the products like Viagra was a big product
Yeah.
of theirs. Pardon the pun there, by the way. But if you look at the sales interaction, so they had to make sure. So when you were selling to very highly qualified people. So you might be selling to a professor in cardiology or a consultant cardiologist.
Right.
So you've got to know your product. You've got
Yeah.
to be, how do you present data to them? Because you don't want to come across as cocky or overconfident. So it's getting a message across. And, at the end of the day, I always look at, sales is not about pressurizing someone to do
No.
something they don't want to do.
Absolutely.
Sales, I've always been taught and learned that it's about helping people to, whether it's medicine or making the right choices. And, so certainly, looking back on those days when we all used to dread it, you'd get videoed doing sales presentations, and then you'd get critiques at the end of it. And, we all have that sort of defensive mechanism in us, and we all like to think we're fantastic and
Yeah.
aren't we great? But it's only when we don't see ourselves, but it's only when you look back. Probably as I'll do on this when I get to see this video, I'll look and go, "Oh my God, this was bloody awful." But
It's great.
I think that whole coaching thing and listening and probably never having an attitude of everything. We can all learn.
Absolutely.
I'm an older guy now. I'm 61, but I'm learning. I love that interaction with people, and
Yeah.
how do they do it? How can I improve what I'm doing? So,
Brilliant.
that's what I think's been really useful.
Brilliant. And I love to collect um, quotes and sayings. Have you got any favorite quotes or sayings about business or success or life in general
Um,
that you use a lot?
well, I kind of half prepared for this, but there's probably a few, and if you ask anyone in our office here, I'm always coming around with lots of sayings, which probably bore people to death because they hear them that often. But there's one I won't even explain, which was I'll always say to people, and I learned this. It was send three and fourpence, we're off to a dance, which was a message on the front line in the First World War, which was the message should have read, send reinforcements, it's time to advance. And the message came around with send three and fourpence, it's off to a dance. So that I'll often say that, and the young people look at me going, what the hell's he on about here? But the primary topic there is about communication. So you're
Yeah.
communicating clearly and directly. My old dad, who's no longer with us, but my dad used to talk about things happening for a reason. So at the time, you always think, and again, things will always work out as well.
Yeah.
So we've had a lot of upsets in business, as you do. You've
Yeah.
had suppliers who are selling to you, they then choose not to sell to you.
Yeah.
So you think your world's come to an end, but generally you'll go on to something, certainly in our case, bigger and better. So, so quite a few little cliches and sayings I've had, which
Brilliant.
certainly some of the younger generation, I get, I'm used to getting odd looks from them, so I'm fine with them.
Brilliant. And can you recommend any books or podcasts on business or success in general? I don't know if you can't, but again, I'd like to collect new recommendations.
Um, I do listen to podcasts. I'm kind of I probably get a little bit impatient with some of it, and I'm trying to think of one of the books I read, which was gosh, it was. I think sometimes one of my faults like the whole memory thing, but the it was looking at running businesses and about taking responsibility.
Brilliant.
And I must let you know because my mind's gone a blank, but it was
Honestly, don't worry, Andy.
and it's a fantastic book, but it basically it talks about how do businesses evolve and normally what happens is people a couple of friends have an idea,
Yep,
set a business, but it's about defining roles and responsibilities. And as the business grows, it's almost gets a little bit lost in the mire who's actually
yep.
responsible for what. And then the business goes through tough times. I could kick myself because I can't think of the book because it's been a few years since I read it. But I think, podcasts are useful. I think
Yep.
business books are useful. I think sometimes the business books, they maybe a little bit too basic, perhaps. And,
Yep.
in the real world, I keep threatening to write my own business book at some stage, which I'd love to do. But I think there's just through experiences of, some fantastic, some less fantastic. And I think the other thing to sort of mention though, when you do run a business, you go into business thinking, my job's to sell, my job's to create a product. But then you end up you're managing people.
Yep.
Yeah, somebody rings up about your electricity. In the early days, you're dealing with that. Somebody's talking about, I don't know, planning permission or the local council or big. So you're doing all those things. So
Yep.
it's very easy to get distracted. And I think there's things we've done over the years. So if I was giving somebody advice on an early stage, think about what you're signing. So it can be as basic as as an energy company.
Yep.
I've had guys here even recently signing up to things for 3, 4 years
Yes.
and having electronic signatures. So just being without naming names of companies, but you
Yep.
do last thing you want because as the owner of the business, it'll land on your desk.
Yep.
So I'm a kind of I think podcasts are useful. I think chatting to people who have run their own businesses, asking
Yep.
them about what have they seen over the years? How would they guide you through this process?
Yep.
Never be afraid to ask. And not, people are great at telling you what went wrong. What went right, but they're probably less likely to tell you the things that they. Yes, so I would say specifically ask that question.
Yep.
What did you find the challenge of running your own business?
Yeah.
And again, the big one for me, and it sort of sticks out. I've worked with some brilliant people. I've had great opportunities. But I've worked with the odd person who have been disruptive. They've had,
Yeah.
so that whole employing of people.
Yep.
When you start a business, you never think about, and we're a little bit more choosy now, but in the early days it was, yeah, get him in, he can do it or she can do it. And sometimes, that can be really something to be wary of. So that
Yeah.
person really has to fit into your team and buy into the ideology of what you're trying to achieve as
Yeah.
well.
That makes perfect sense. And Andy, I'm keen to know what you'd say you'd learned about yourself throughout your journey so far.
What have I learned about myself? Oh gosh. I should. I think my wife would probably be. She'd probably have a few things to add. She's probably got a big list of long suffering after whatever 37 years or something. I think I'm. If you look at your personality, I like to think it talks about that, integrity and honesty and all the rest of it. Passion. So those had a passion. If I did sport, whatever I did, it's always really
Yep.
passionate. Might not be the best at it, but it's that passion and
Yep.
that competitiveness. So I probably always had that and learn about myself. I think I'm probably a little bit more relaxed today. So I think I, you know, probably, it's that balance, isn't it, between intensity and being
Yeah,
over intense. So,
yeah, yeah,
so for me, I've always, you know, it's been 100% on with something. What did I learn about myself? Maybe, a bit more patience, perhaps.
yeah,
Perhaps trying to understand people a little bit better. Um, and certainly now, and did I do it in the older? But it's showing an interest in other people.
yeah.
So I think, it's whether you're in business or you're in your social life, we all love to talk about ourselves, don't we? But it's nice to understand what other people, their story, and, and try and, you can learn so much just by, listening sometimes and I'm waffling on here, but I love chatting to the old guy in the pub who's had 6 different jobs and traveled all over the world, and I find that fascinating. So, probably learn that I think I'm okay at business. I think I finally found the
Yeah.
right job for me.
Evidence is there.
Um, I think I'm passionate about what I enjoy. If I don't enjoy, I think I spoke to you earlier, Chris. I probably lose a bit of
Yeah,
interest quickly. I like to think I like to think the people who work for us as well would say, you're understanding, you've got that compassion. 'Cause
great.
again, you look at people in employment, you know, people are going to have problems. The dog needs to go to the vet, the car breaks down, the whatever else it is. So I think, having that compassion. I think people have said to me in the past, going, "Oh, you're soft," but then the people who really know me kind of go, "There's a difference between being compassionate and understanding, and not being able to make decisions and take
Oh,
decisions." And
absolutely.
it's
Two
about
different
it's about,
things.
it's about getting the balance, I'd say, very much so.
Two different things for sure. Absolutely. And
Yeah.
and so looking forward, Andy, what does the future look like for you guys, and what challenges do you think you might face, if any?
A little bit with the hearing there, Chris. Were you saying about the future for LTC and
Yeah,
looking?
what yeah, what's the future and what challenges might you
Yeah,
face, if any?
yeah, I mean, it's really brilliant for us. So going back into our specific industry, so it's medical devices. So it's pretty, let's say it's complex, but there is a QA, so quality assurance side to it. Um, I've always had to do that myself. We don't have a QA guy, so I've learned a lot about this particular industry, but it's not specific to that. So any industry you're in with manufacturing, learn the processes, go around the factories. The future for us. Fantastic. We've literally just got I'm going through the process of getting our products into Italy and Spain.
Brilliant.
So even though we're in the EU, you can't sell direct into those countries unless you have like a pharmacy license and it's all
Yes.
documentation and
Yep.
pretty similar to we have the medical health regulatory people here in the UK, those two particular countries. So we're opening the doors there.
Brilliant.
The next move for us is Australia, but
Brilliant.
you've got to have therapeutic goods administration there. We're then going to look at Canada, and then the big one for us will be the US. So we've actually got all our packaging in line for the US, but we're kind of a little bit tentative there because we know it's such a massive market,
Yep.
and choosing the right partner and people to work with is the next. So it's going to probably keep us busy, I would hope, for the next sort of 10 years or so anyway.
Wow, absolutely fantastic. And I'm interested to know. Obviously, that's a fair way away. One of our key definition of a true business is a commercial, profitable enterprise that can work without its owners. And how do you feel about that sort of definition of a business?
Yeah, sorry, Chris. I don't know if it's my hearing or whatever, but
Oh,
could
I'm
you?
so sorry. Let me come closer. Yeah, no, I'm just interested. Our definition of a true business is a commercial, profitable enterprise, which you've clearly got, but one that can work without its owners. And I'm keen to know what your thoughts are, given how long you've been running and growing your own business.
Yeah, well, I think if I sort of processing that, it's interesting, isn't it? So you've got businesses where, I think, not everybody's probably wants to run a business. Everybody thinks it's this ideal situation, and all the rest of it. And I think sort of taking that look at yourself and going, do I want to take the responsibility for dealing with people's personal problems and everything else you get involved with? But I think the business, it's quite interesting. I might not be answering this quite correctly, but I know like my brother works with a big business, so
Yeah,
he's really highly qualified. He still acts as we'll tap into his advice occasionally, and he does work with my son who's 30. So you've got
brilliant.
managing director of a big FTSE 100 company chatting to my son Michael, who's 30 years of age, who's
Brilliant.
got 12 people to manage. But the two businesses are so different,
Yeah.
so my brother, with his decision making, if they've got to go buy another business, which might be millions pounds, sometimes I just think about making, quick decisions and being able to do that, which, you'll certainly do with a smaller business. But, so the businesses, sort of looking at the definitions, they are, you know, obviously, there's a lot of commonality, with how we
Yeah.
run businesses and, processes. We do a lot of processes now. So, in the old days, somebody went off, nobody else knew how to do things.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now
Very
we're
common.
covering ourselves, stock control,
Brilliant.
we work with a system called Orderwise. So we do, quite well, good on stock control and scanning products in and out and, you know, and, just roles and responsibilities to those
Yeah.
businesses. So does everybody know what their part is? Sounds obvious,
Yep.
but from my experience, it's probably not always obvious. People, you know, kind of, what you don't want is like a blame culture. It's not my job to do that. You want people
Absolutely.
to pick it up and take that further forward.
Absolutely. No, I'm working with two or three businesses right now where we're putting more process, procedure, organizational structures, those sorts of things, because there's a point, 5, 6 people, you all sort of know what everyone else is doing. You sort of got it in your head, haven't you? And that's okay. That's the right thing to that point. But once you get past that get past 8, 9, 10, 12 people like yourself, it's so key to start to look at the organization as a set of roles rather than a set of people, and the people fulfill the roles, then it allows it to be a bit more interchangeable if we've documented. So
Yeah.
no, totally agree.
I
Um,
think, and I think it's about, sort of just jumping in there,
yeah, it's all good.
when you first start in business, so when I first started, you do everything. So I did,
Yep,
online banking, chasing creditors up, sales, unloading, whatever. You do the whole lot.
yep,
And over time, as you quite rightly said, you build your team, you've got more members of the staff. So you've got to trust people, you've got to give them the
yep,
right training, you've got to let go of the reins, but also have an understanding of what they're doing. Um, and I still look at, sort of like, so I'm, you know, an interesting case in that I've got my son's in the business, she'll eventually be handed over to him. But part of it is things like the financial control. So my son can sign things off and he looks at the bank probably more than I do, but I do look at the bank daily. I look at, who we owe money to, what we've coming down the pipeline. So that whole cash flow planning and so, my kind of comments to somebody, just keeping a tight control. And I've got numerous examples of businesses we've worked with who just let the finances run away with them.
yep.
And they've raised I won't mention the name, but they raised about £1 million on, one of these platforms. And, they went bust about 2 years later. But you look where that money went. So, for example, I think with these guys spent over 100 grand on a website.
Right.
And I'm going, would I have spent 100 grand? And the answer to that is no.
No.
So,
Yeah.
so you've got to be, really managing it pretty tightly and staying close to, because I think for me on that, just going on there, I said I did promise you I'd go off on a tangent, but
Absolutely.
I
All
think
good.
they, look at the bank, daily. So I'm not, precious where, I'm questioning everything, but I know what's going through the bank, and I think that's a big part of my responsibility because as the managing director, if I don't know what we've got, So thankfully, we're now in the times where, we're cash rich,
Yeah,
but I'd say to anyone, my son, when he eventually takes over full control, you can't not have an oversight on that. You don't have to
yeah,
do everything financial. I don't do all the putting in, invoices onto the system, but I do look at the bank and I look at and paying our major suppliers. So sometimes we're paying them, I don't know, $150,000, $200,000 orders. So yeah, it's a lot of money to kind of have,
yeah,
perhaps a junior person pressing a button,
yeah, yeah.
particularly in the days of fraud. So
No, it makes perfect sense. But yeah, it makes absolute sense. And final question, Andy, what would be the best advice you could give an 18-year-old you if you could go back in time and do that?
um, I think for me is I, just enjoy what you're doing. Nothing is worth worrying about. So, if I talk to, younger people, and I think when you are, in particular when you're younger, the worries are, where I'm going to live, what job I'm going to do,
Yeah,
will I ever be able to do? And I think the answer to that is you will. So if you're, keen and enthusiastic enough to do it, you'll achieve it. So, if I went back in time, don't think I was a big worrier, but we all have that little bit of anxiety and, whether it's changing jobs or starting a business or whatever. Things work out. And
yeah,
going back to my old dad saying, everything happens for a reason. And if start a business and the first one doesn't work out, perhaps you'll meet someone who'll take you in another direction, and your second attempt may be, really successful.
brilliant, great advice. Great advice. It's like, yeah, don't keep going because sometimes the first one isn't the right one, and it is. We have to try a couple of things, but it's the success is about getting up, isn't it? It's not about not falling over. It's about getting up again and going again,
Yeah,
which
yeah,
I think is so
yeah,
key.
definitely.
And it's been fascinating talking to you. And again, congratulations on such a successful business over such a significant period of time. And for anyone that's interested in contacting you or LTC Healthcare, what would be the best way of doing that?
Yeah, they can. So we've got so it's ltchealthcare.co.uk. So our website and all the contact details are there.
Brilliant.
If anybody, either via yourself, Chris, or I'm, you know, you can probably tell, really enthusiastic about giving people guidance. Not a know-all. It's usually because I've probably done something wrong in the past, and I now see the pitfalls of it. And
Yep.
but by all means, sort of, get in touch. I'm always more than happy to talk business with people.
Brilliant. Well, it'd be great to swing by another 6, 12 months and just see what the next developments are for you guys. But for now, thank you so much for your time.
Brilliant. Okay, thank you, Chris. Nice to meet you, and look forward to perhaps the next meeting.
Thank you.